Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Lucy Superfox Show. My name is Lucy Superfox. This is my podcast. So on today's episode, I want to answer the big question that comes up for a lot for me when I meet clients inside discovery sessions. And that is, why didn't therapy work for me before? So in this episode, I'm going to dive into why certain modalities of therapy don't work, why it maybe didn't work for you before, and ultimately how, if you are ready to move forward, what strategies and systems I would apply so that any kind of therapy that you dive into is supportive and helps you shift, grow, and change. So without further ado, let's dive in. So why didn't therapy work for you? Well, first of all, there are literally hundreds and hundreds of types of therapy. Now, therapy kind of gets the umbrella of what's called psychotherapy, or under kind of the psychology umbrella, which often sometimes is referred to as talk therapy. And talk therapy is freaking brilliant if you are a cognitive, intellectual, up in your head kind of person who needs insight and understanding. If that is your jam, then you probably will find quite a lot of relevance, but quite a lot of understanding, quite a lot of depth from talk therapy. And that can look like working with a psychotherapist, a psychologist, counseling, if it's around more of a kind of emotional response to why something happened, like grief counseling is absolutely incredible. Sometimes with a life coach such as myself, that kind of talking insight-based system can be so incredibly supportive. Now, under talk therapy and under therapy modalities includes things like CBT, includes things like emotional freedom technique, although that's a hybrid somatic talk therapy approach. And that's because it's all to do with how we think and the programming of our thoughts and the way our thoughts show up for us. Now, the challenge is, for a lot of women, talk therapy works for a while. It works up to a certain point. And then beyond a certain point, what happens is we feel like we're stagnating, or we feel like we're going in circles, or we feel like we're just not really making those waves or moves. We feel like maybe we understand ourselves better. We feel like maybe we get to a point where we've got some real insight and real awareness, and that's awesome. And sometimes even awareness is enough to create radical and massive change. I'm a massive fan of talk therapy. I had psychotherapy for years, right? So I am a massive, massive fan. But what I've seen happen over the last couple of years, particularly with my clients, and personally, this is absolutely my journey, is I reached a point where there was nothing else for me to say. I was done saying the same things. I was having the same conversation over and over, ending up back in the same spot. And as though I went round and round in my head, I wasn't really getting any clearer, because what was happening was I was actually starting to notice the feelings and sensations that were coming up in my body. So let's say I was going to speak to a certain person, I'd get really anxious, or I was thinking about going to an event and I'd feel really kind of like, checked out and despondent. And so rather than analyzing why, which is how I would have started, I started to witness and become aware of how I was feeling about things. And that's when I really moved in to the somatic, and soma just means body, by the way, the somatic approach to healing. And I really moved down the routes, and I've talked about this extensively before. You know, I've done breath work, I've done sound baths, I've done acupuncture, I've done aromatherapy, I've done, like I said, EFT is a hybrid. I have done some massage work, I have chiropractic regularly, I've done Reiki, I have done spinal energetic stuff, I have done spinal flow stuff, I have done so many types. And I was never a person that picked like one thing and was like, right, this is the thing, because I just loved actually just working with my body, and whatever that one thing was, I would stay with it. So, you know, a big part of this journey for me was also moving away from the gym, which felt like a very performative, get it done kind of hustle energy that I just didn't have capacity for. And I moved into doing reformer Pilates, where it's all about the breath, it's all about the focus, it's all about core control. And so all of these modalities, right, were bringing me out of my head and into my body. And so across the span of basically what was 2 years, the transformation in me was fucking insane. And so during this time, this is when, you know, the Becoming course was launched for the first time in 2023. And this is, you know, this is the Inner Shift program. This is the program where you do the deep inner work so that on the other end of it, you embody that next level self. You come out the other side as that person that you have been trying to be for the past fucking 5 years, right? So this course has been built throughout this whole journey. And it was part of this time where I saw someone post in a Facebook group about root cause therapy and said, listen, I need a practice student. And like I said, I was open, I was willing, I was like, yes, I'm game. And I had root cause therapy, and I'd known for a while I wanted another modality in my business. I'd known for a while that in addition to life coaching, to EFT, to my kind of unique style of life coaching, I would say I am a life coach, but I have my clients will tell you I have a very different style. And I was like, I need something else. I want something deeper. I want something that works at the level of body. And I thought about maybe doing Reiki, or, you know, I wasn't really sure. And that was when I had this root cause therapy session. I went, holy fucking shit, this is it. This is exactly what I need to provide to my clients. And so I basically then went instantly into, after a couple of sessions, I went into training, and obviously it's months of training. Lots of practice sessions, lots of notes, and massive shout out to the clients who were like, yes, I will be your practice student, right? And so I then decided on top of that I was like, great, now that I'm working at the level of the body and the insight and bringing in the higher self, and for anyone that's never found out anything about root cause therapy, it is fucking magic. And I've got a really blended approach where I really blend polyvagal therapy, which is really about the nervous system and somatic experiencing. So working with the body at a really kind of stable and regulating level, and then the deep work of root cause therapy, because root cause therapy is deep shifts, fast transformation, like shifting at the level of the unconscious, bringing in the higher self. It is magic. If you want to find out more about that, by the way, you can go to lucysuperfox.com/RCT. I've got a whole video there that explains how RCT works and what to do next. But my point being, this then led me to the place where I started to see radical shifts with clients, right? So radical shifts, like shifts with clients who I'd had for a while, who intellectually were there, who were intelligent women, who weren't sabotaging anymore practically because they had so much awareness that they didn't feel different. And root cause therapy started to really help them shift. And for some clients, root cause therapy wasn't their jam and they went off and found other things, which I just love so much for them. But what I found on the whole was, I would say 90% of the clients that had root cause therapy absolutely loved it, because what it allowed them to do was get to the root of the issue, get into their body, shift those energies, shift those emotions, and bring them insight, wisdom, lessons, and learning, so that from that place, they were able to go, fucking hell, I can totally see why that happened. But also, now that I've processed that energy and emotion, I no longer have that chronic feeling in my body. Therefore, I no longer take that action. And when we remove these unprocessed emotions, and the way I describe, whether it's an adverse experience, whether it is, trauma, and I think people find the word triggering in itself, and trauma looks different for every person, whether it is trauma, unprocessed emotions, unfelt feelings, unprocessed experiences, what root cause therapy helps you do is go back in and close the loop. And when we close the loop, the nervous system then knows that experience is over, and it releases that chronic stimulation or that chronic trigger from a pattern you keep repeating. But what it also does is make energetic room. It makes more space, it makes more capacity, and your nervous system learns, oh, I'm safer now. So combined with the work I do as a polyvagal therapist, working with you on those small levels to create those small levels of safety in between, right? From everything as simple as to a butterfly hug to your breath, what happens is then from that place, you start to feel different. And when we feel different, then we think different, and then we act different. And so this is why traditional, the concept of traditional therapy, and just to be super clear, therapy actually encompasses all of the somatics, it encompasses all of talk therapy. But when we're talking about traditional therapy as counseling or psychotherapy, that's where it has its limitations, unless the person that you work with also has a somatic approach, right? And it's because the body remembers what the mind does not. And I can tell you that because I have clients who do root cause therapy who in their experiences have processed experiences from past lives, who have processed experiences from ancestors, who have processed experience, and we validated it with parents and grandparents that those things really happen, but there's no way they would have conscious memory of them, right? But the body remembered the tension, the fear, the anxiety, the stress. It remembered this chronic sense of I need to be worried, I need to be on edge, this chronic sense of overwhelm. And so root cause therapy, once that kind of foundation of safety is there, which is what my job is to assess, right? When you come to talk to me, is my job to work out how safe you are to do this work. But when you do it, it's not about re-traumatizing yourself. It's not about reliving the experience to make things worse for yourself. It's about allowing your nervous system to close the loop on an experience that maybe wasn't even yours. And when we do that, when we allow ourselves and the nervous system to close the loop, that is when we really see that powerful transformation and shift energetically and in the nervous system. And when we see those shifts, that is when life responds to us differently. That's when we start receiving those opportunities. That's when we start thinking differently and making different moves. That's when we're able to then step into that powerful identity, that powerful next level version of us that you are, that you've had the potential to have for fucking years, and it's just never manifested simply because you hadn't got to the depths of the energetic work that was holding you back like an anchor. And that is why sometimes women don't feel like therapy has worked for them, or that therapy stops working. And it's because we have to work at the level of the body and the mind. So another reason why people don't think therapy works is sometimes you haven't found the right practitioner. And the truth is, I think finding a therapist is like finding a husband, right? Like there are lots of good, great men out there, but it doesn't mean you want to spend all your life with them. It's the same as therapist. You want to find somebody who's on your level, who's got your energy, who's got a vibe. Like my therapist, my psychotherapist was a vibe for me, right? My root cause therapist is a vibe for me because obviously as a root cause therapist, I have to have root cause therapy. You know, my supervisor in my therapy work, so my polyvagal therapy, she's a vibe. Like these people are vibes, right? They are a vibe for me. They might not be a vibe for the next person. And so finding a therapist that you actually gel with, that, and it's not about banter. Like some people want a therapist to be very serious and very heavy, but like I'm not that kind of therapist, right? Like I'm not that kind of life coach. I'm not going to sit there and be like, yes, that's heavy. I'm going to say, interesting. What's come up for you just there? And you're going to say, oh my God, didn't even realize something had. And I'm like, yeah, it was your eyes. They moved. And like, you know, keeping it light, because sometimes it gets so fucking heavy, right? So finding a practitioner, and I think there's a lot of guilt and shame. We kind of feel like if we found a therapist and we go to a session, we should stay with them. And actually, I think after a couple of sessions, you know, your nervous system knows too. Because if your nervous system doesn't feel safe enough in that person's presence, doesn't trust that person, that they see you, they witness you, they're actually there for you. If you don't get that vibe, you're not going to heal. You're not, because the first step to healing is feeling seen. And if you feel like there's judgment or negativity or criticism for that person, then you're not going to feel deeply seen at your most vulnerable, at your most wounded. Because when we feel seen at our, inverted commas, worst, that allows us to release the shame. And when we release some of that shame in that space with that person, that is when there's room for growth. That is when there's room for healing. That is when there's capacity for. So finding the right therapist, practitioner, you know, whether that's somatics, talk therapy, blended stuff like I do as a life coach and, you know, multi-therapist, like it really doesn't matter. But it's about finding the fit for you, the energy for you, the person for you that's going to allow you to shift and change at that deep visceral level, but also giving you the space to talk about how you're feeling and share what's going on for you in a way that allows you to feel seen. And the third way that therapy didn't work for you is that you didn't work it. And that sounds like I'm being harsh, and I'm not. Therapy isn't just about what you do in the 60 minutes or the 50 minutes or the 45 minutes or the 90 minutes or whatever session you have. It isn't about just what you do in there. It's about what you do afterwards. And this is called integration. This is about how you take the lessons, the insight, the wisdom, or you take the emotional experience or the physical experience that you process and what you do for yourself afterwards. So are you bringing in small safety cues? Are you prioritizing? I call them the big five. They are the most simple things you can do for nervous system regulation. Hydration, good quality nutrition, sunlight or daylight. We live in the UK. Sunlight or daylight, exercise and sleep. And look, if you're a newborn mom right now, I get it. Maybe ignore the sleep one. But if you're not prioritizing these things outside of session, one, your body's not physically able to integrate these shifts and changes. But two, if you go out of that session and you're like, actually, I brought some real awareness and wisdom today, but you know what, tonight I'm just going to get loads of work done and hustle and then drink a glass of wine. You're not actually creating space to create any change, right? So integration happens, one, through walking things out, but two, when we give our nervous system the space in between the therapy session and the next thing. So I always say to my clients, you know, you might feel a bit like you've been hit by a bus tomorrow. You know, it's called like a healing hangover, but it's really important that you give yourself space to do that. So that's why I work Sunday nights. It's why I work evenings, because I want my clients to have the space between what they're doing, where I work Fridays, right? And give them the space to do the integration and the healing work. Because healing doesn't happen in the moment, just like when you're in the gym, right? You don't build muscle in the gym, you build muscle while you're resting. You don't burn fat while you're exercising, you burn fat when your body's out of fuel and it needs to burn fat. Like it doesn't happen in the moment, right? Massive transformational shifts happen in the moment, just like in the workout, just like on the run, just like in something like root cause therapy. But the long-term lasting effects happen in the in-between. And if myself or another practitioner or therapist gives you things to do in between sessions and you don't do them, you don't do the practices, you don't do the small safety cues, you don't get the exercise, you don't do the hydration, you don't nourish yourself, you don't get the sleep, you don't take the supplement if you're on a nutrition plan, like that's why it didn't work. Because you allowed your nervous system to pull you back into old programming, no matter how deep the process was, no matter what the was, you allowed it to pull you back. You allowed it to snap you back like an elastic band. And that is where your autonomy and your agency as a grown adult needs to step in to integrate the work that comes from the therapy. So they are the three reasons that maybe therapy didn't work for you. But if you are ready for the year of the horse for 2026 to be the year you step into that next level identity, the Becoming Next Level Identity program is open for enrollment now. There are only 3 spaces available at the time of recording this for one-to-one. There might be none at the time this goes out, and a self-paced version available. And if you are curious about what that looks like, you can go to lucysuperfox.com/becoming or /becoming-11 for the one-to-one program. If there are spaces still available, there will be a yes button on the website. So I hope you love this episode. I hope you found it helpful, and I'll see you on the next one.